I think we're all aware by now of what planet we live on, that being the planet Earth, the water planet, the pale blue dot, so to speak. Well, what if I were to tell you that our planet is under attack? Now, this attack isn't from some kind of extraterrestrial creature or some forgotten beast from the past, but rather a slight change in temperature. What I mean by this is that the Earth is going through something known as climate change, which means that the global climate of the Earth is changing. Specifically, it is going up. And the main reason for this is through something known as greenhouse gases. A greenhouse gas is any gas that really has a good ability to sort of trap heat. And there are plenty of these gases, but some of the main ones are carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs for short. When these gases are released, they go all the way up into the atmosphere and they stay there. And that means that the atmosphere is able to trap in a lot more heat from the sun. And what that means is that over time, the climate of the Earth will continue to rise because the heat isn't escaping from the atmosphere, and so we essentially don't have any way to get rid of it. This is what is known as the greenhouse effect, and it's the primary issue when it comes to climate change. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, aren't these naturally occurring gases? And you'd be right, the Earth does naturally create these gases. However, it seems like climate change is only a recent issue, so what exactly happened? Well, we happened. You see, when we started to create societies and making things for them, we didn't exactly realize the unintended consequences that it might bring. For example, the domestication of animals. You see, when we domesticated animals, they obviously had to use the bathroom somewhere, right? And there was more of them, so we had a more plentiful source of manure, right? And most notably, cow manure is very concentrated in methane, which means that there's a lot more methane in the world. And as we talked about earlier, methane is a greenhouse gas. And with that means there is a lot more of a distinct effect on the Earth with greenhouse gases. And then things really took a turn when we entered the Industrial Revolution. You see, during this time, we had so much machinery being created to advance society. However, in order to do that, we need fuel for all this machinery, which we were able to find with the use of coal and oil. However, the problem with that is that as we used it, we released the waste that comes from this fuel, and it is now going into the atmosphere and again creating that greenhouse effect. And of course, we have not slowed down since. I mean, with the advances of technology, there have been some kind of sacrifices in the environment. Specifically, things like landfills, which are full of trash, and methane, which, again, as we talked about earlier, is going into the atmosphere and creating that greenhouse effect and trapping heat. When we combine all those things, we find ourselves with a planet that is slowly rising in temperature. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, what's the big deal? Well, it's a pretty huge deal. Mother Nature is a fickle beast, and when it is even tampered with slightly, you can see its consequences. And this can come in many different varieties, such as more frequent storms, irregular season patterns, droughts, floods, more diseases, the melting of ice. I mean, we are permanently changing the face of Earth as we speak. Not only is this affecting our planet, it's affecting us. I mean, we have to suffer the effects that this has on our planet. People will die in the storms that are being created. People will starve from the droughts due to no food. People will get sick from the pathogens that are being released from the ice that we have no way to prepare for. We've essentially created a relationship with the Earth where we are slowly overtaking it with our stuff. And what the Earth is doing is essentially a positive feedback loop. We're increasing the heat more and more until eventually it gets rid of us. Now, this all sounds scary, which it is, but I think the more scary part is that no one seems to be doing anything about it. The inaction of people seems to boil down to the simple fact of either people just aren't aware of what's going on. There are people that are aware of what's going on, but they just simply don't care. Or there's people that just think it's not true, and they think it's some kind of lie and conspiracy to get rid of big business, like a typical commie plot. If we want the future of our planet to thrive, we need to make sure that people are aware of climate change and to have people care about it. So, how exactly do we do that? One of the best ways to do this is to simply teach our children about what's going on. I mean, these are young, impressionable minds that really can soak up anything. And if we teach them early on about what is happening to the Earth and just how much it can affect the future of it, there's definitely going to be a lot more of a feeling of needing to do something from an early age. And I think that's very important when it comes to people caring about things. Another good way of getting people to do something is finding a reason to care. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to do something unless you find an incentive to, or to find some good reason why you should care. Well, it's simply a matter of finding what's important to you. Whether that is you want the planet to thrive, or you want the future of your children to be prosperous, or you want America to be thriving in the next 100 years. You have to find your reason to care about the planet, and that ultimately will guide you into how you can help. Life is very precious on this earth, and we sometimes take it for granted. And especially with this climate change thing, it might seem bleak. However, if we get people to care about our planet, there might just be a chance that even from cats to humans, we might make it.